grateful to have you here. I feel like I could keep talking just about you, but this is not my show. It's your show. Let's go.
I'm so grateful to be here. I feel really at peace right now. I feel I feel really, really warm and present and connected. And I mean, I don't know about you, but those are the feelings that I live for.
Goodness gracious. I mean, I think if we just take down my tonality and the sound of that intro and we just go back to what you just said, I feel warm and present and at peace. I'm like, yes, Jesus, like that's what we do yearn for, especially with a little bit of snow outside in my hometown in Virginia
Here
Beach,
too.
Virginia, a fire on. I've got my cozy slippers on right now. So I'm feeling all the things, but then that internal peace and presence and warmth that you provide. I want to know, like, where does that stem from? Has that always been something like since you were little that you've had, or you feel like that's something you're developing?
I think that's something that I've been developing and continue to develop because as a child, I think I was the opposite of peace. I think I was, I grew up in a home where I was the middle child. One of my siblings was ill, and so there was a lot of conflict in the house and things like that. And so I played the role of the achiever, and I played the role of watch me dance, look at my jazz fingers, I would entertain and I would achieve. And so I think a lot of that growing up made me feel like I had to fit into this box of what I was supposed to be. I know you've talked about this in your book too.
Totally. 1000%.
And I didn't start feeling peace until I started to shed myself of that identity. My brother says it's like I put on these coats, and it would happen when I moved away. I grew up in Connecticut and I moved away from my family of origin. Love them to death, but when I moved, it was the first time I ever had an opportunity to really go, okay, taking off this layer,
Completely.
So when one of my brothers said to me one time, you put on jacket after jacket, coat after coat. And I realized I don't have to be wearing those coats ever.
That's so good. And I feel like
So
so many people are doing that. And especially even coats of like fear, coats of shame. And we could name every single one of those coats, right? And it takes seasons of deliverance and seasons of release. That's my word for the year, but like releasing those coats and like being okay with not just putting them in the closet, but more like, let's burn that one. Let's have no remnants of that one. Not to say that those things aren't important to who we are, but it's more of that testimony of spirit rather than that testimony of shackle.
absolutely. And to know that, and this is something that I continuing to learn as well, is that sometimes we can have even shame in that, right? It's like, I'm going to burn this jacket because this jacket's bad or whatever. And it's like, no, this coat protected me when I needed it. And
That's
I don't
so
know,
good.
I no longer need it. And I'm so grateful. It's almost like the Marie Kondo, but in this
Yes,
like,
that's totally
it
it.
is like in this like ethereal, like super heady space, abstract space. It's like, like to hold it and to be so grateful and to say, I'm so grateful for the warmth and the comfort that you provided. And I don't need you anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and what's beautiful, and especially for women, I think a lot of women are like, they don't wanna have the language of like, "That just doesn't fit me anymore," like, that's not what we want. We want everything to fit us, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're probably more likely, and I'd be curious in like a study, we're more likely to put on coats that are not meant for us because we want to fit in and we want them to
Mm-hmm.
look good. And so we're actually utilizing somebody else's crutch, which is their blanket, their coat, and it's not even good for them to have on. And isn't it
Mm-hmm.
interesting that we do that? And I think living in the type of society that we do, and knowing that achievement is associated to that, we think that the glitz and the glam and the nice coats are really what we want, but it's really that inside man that we want to grow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that comes from comparison, and Mike calls it comparisonitis. You know,
Yeah.
and when we compare, and this was especially true for me, I know growing up, is I wasn't competing with anybody else but myself.